Welcome to History for fourth grade. This is lesson 145, and we're going to be on pages 211 and 212, and we're only going up to, on 212, the paragraph that starts Germany, National Socialism, okay? And so we're going to save that one for the next day, okay? But as we look at our the world wars and the time between them, we want to again remember the presidents that we have been learning. And so first of all, we're going to go to 256 and 257 if you need it, and we're going to sing our president's song, okay? Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Adams, Jackson, Buren, Harrison, Tyler, Polk and Taylor, Fillmore, Pierce, Buchanan, Lincoln, Johnson, Grantham, Hayes, Garfield, Arthur, Cleveland, Harrison, Cleveland, McKinley, Roosevelt, Taft, Wilson, Harding, Coolidge, Hoover, Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump was the next one. All right, I hope you're able to keep up. If not, go back and do it again with me, okay? And we have also been learning the states and capitals, and so we're going to do that as well. We're going to say those. So, Montgomery, Alabama, Juneau, Alaska, Phoenix, Arizona, Little Rock, Arkansas, Sacramento, California, Denver, Colorado, Hartford, Connecticut, Dover, Delaware, Tallahassee, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, Honolulu, Hawaii, Boise, Idaho, Springfield, Illinois, Indianapolis, Indiana, Des Moines, Iowa, Topeka, Kansas, Frankfort, Kentucky, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Augusta, Maine, Annapolis, Maryland, Boston, Massachusetts, Lansing, Michigan, St. Paul, Minnesota, Jackson, Mississippi, Jefferson City, Missouri, Helena, Montana, Lincoln, Nebraska, Carson City, Nevada, Concord, New Hampshire, Trenton, New Jersey, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Albany, New York, Raleigh, North Carolina, Bismarck, North Dakota, Columbus, Ohio, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Salem, Oregon, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Providence, Rhode Island, Columbia, South Carolina, Pierre, South Dakota, Nashville, Tennessee, Austin, Texas, Salt Lake City, Utah, Montpelier, Vermont, Richmond, Virginia, Olympia, Washington, Charleston, West Virginia, Madison, Wisconsin, Cheyenne, Wyoming. Very good. All right, and again, go back and do that with me again if you need the extra help, okay? Looking at page 211, I'm going to ask just a couple questions. What were the years of the 1920s called? Those were the Roaring Twenties, all right, good job. What did the government do to try to end the Depression? Great answer. Creating jobs through projects such as building highways, dams, and bridges. And why was Calvin Coolidge's inaugural address so special? It was the first inaugural address to be broadcast over the radio, okay? And so those were some of the things that our country and the world was advancing in the technologies and the different things that happened during the Roaring Twenties. And so we've looked at that and the Great Depression, and what we had said about the Great Depression was that our country did not fully come out of the Depression and all traces of the Depression until we went to war again, okay? So this is going to lay the groundwork for why we go to war again, okay? So there were several dictators that were coming to power, and those were people who ruled by force and allow their people and allow their subjects little, if any, freedom, okay? One of the first ones that we look at is the leader of Russia. That was Vladimir Lenin, and he was the one who introduced communism. Vladimir Nikolai Lenin was his full name, and he was a cruel dictator. He was, anyone who oppressed him, he would have them killed or put in prison, and that he was an awful, awful man. And the Soviet Union was his empire, and they were the ones that started threatening other countries around them. And so that's what they were, that's how this started, was that they were trying to take control of other countries and try to build this kingdom, and they weren't supposed to. When communism takes over a country, the government claims to own these things: businesses, homes, and land. Okay, so the government just decides that it takes ownership over everything. If that happened in America, then if your family owned a home, you would no longer own that home. You would basically be renting it from the government. And they might make you, even if you paid off your house, they might make you pay them money because for living in their house, even though you had rightfully owned it before. But that's what communism does when it comes into a nation, a country. So there was great persecution during this time, but by 1929, Joseph Stalin became the leader of over the Soviet Union. Vladimir Lenin was taken out of power for whatever reason. It doesn't exactly explain this, but Joseph Stalin takes over, and he is known as one of the cruelest dictators the world has ever known. And you may think, well, I've heard of Adolf Hitler and he was pretty cruel, but Joseph Stalin was even more cruel, but he was more subtly cruel. Okay, so it wasn't as much out in the open as Adolf Hitler seemed to be out in the open about it, but Joseph Stalin kind of more had a good face for the public, and so for the countries. But he had concentration camps in Siberia that he would send people who opposed him to, and that was kind of like an exile, because Siberia is a very cold part of Russia, or it was part of Russia at the time, and that was one of his ways of getting rid of people. In 1939, he made an agreement with Adolf Hitler, the dictator of Germany, to help if Germany went to war. So Soviet Union was going to help Germany when they went to war because of the leadership that was in charge. The last the other country we're gonna look at today is Italy, and that was under the rule of Benito Mussolini. And Benito Mussolini started what is known as the Fascist Party. Now, the Fascist Party is not a party about fashion, okay? So it's not fashion, it's fascist, okay? And so the fascists were, the people could own their own property, but they couldn't do with it as they thought best. Anyone who dared to disobey Mussolini was killed or put in prison. So if you owned like a piece of land and you wanted to build on it, you would have to get specific permission to build. And if the government said you couldn't and you went ahead and tried, you could be put in prison or you could die. And so that was their control over the people that they had. And so, you know, the people under these countries, even though they might have a few freedoms, like the Fascist Party gives them some freedoms, they are not truly free. And they don't have they can't just take a vacation and go somewhere without filling out paperwork and stating why you would be going. And so the freedoms that we enjoy, that we have grown up with, that are we just take for granted, other people in other countries may not have the same freedoms. And so that's what, that's one of the reasons we look at this, is to see the world around us and to know what happens around us, because we are privileged to grow up in such a free country, but we don't want to just cover our eyes and just say, well, then I'm not going to worry about anyone else. because we need to really know what's going on out there and know how, if we can help and how we can help, if that's ever an opportunity that you have, okay? So I'm gonna ask a few questions about what I just talked about, just to recap. What are people who rule by force and allow their subjects little, if any, freedom? Dictators, very good. And who was the communist dictator of the Soviet Union? That was Joseph Stalin, okay? Vladimir Lenin was before him, but he wasn't a good leader. He built a cruel empire, but he was part of the Communist Party, but Joseph Stalin is known as the communist leader. Sorry. What type of government did Mussolini have in Italy? Fascism, okay? Fascism. What type of government claims to own businesses, homes, and lands? That would be communism. Good job if you got that. What type of government allows the people to own their property, but they cannot do with it as they think best? That would be fascism. All right. So we've talked about fascism and communism and Mussolini and Joseph Stalin and the Vladimir Lenin, who was before Joseph Stalin. And these men are some of the leaders that, along with Germany's leader, Adolf Hitler, and Japan's leader, Emperor Hirohito, and really Tojo was the one who was in charge. These leaders were going to be the ones that were really the driving force behind World War II and really trying to create this war among the whole world. And so that's really, these are ones that really we want you to know, because they have played such an important part in why America joined this world war and why other countries were part of it. And so they were not good men. They were cruel, and they were dictators, but we learn about them so that we can see what sin can do in this world. And that's one of the things that is brought about because people are sinful and they desire that ultimate power over others. And that leads to so many things. And in this case, this is like the ultimate, having a leader over a nation and just crushing anyone that is below you that doesn't believe the same and doesn't want to follow what you are saying. And so go ahead and make sure that you go back and read those 2 pages to the Stopping at Germany, National Socialism. We'll look at that tomorrow. And then study pages 204 to 211 for the quiz that is tomorrow, okay? And don't forget to brush up on and study your states and capitals for that quiz, okay? So make sure you know, if you are still shaky on some of those, make sure you know your states and capitals for that quiz as well, okay? You're not gonna see all of them, but you might see a few, all right? We'll see you next time.